Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome to the Early Edge. My name is Sia Najad, and boy, do we have a great show for you today as we are on the precipice of the Sweet 16 and Major League Baseball's opening day. A lot to talk about. Let's bring in some of the stars of the show to talk about it all. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start with March Madness with Larry Hartstein, a.k.a. the Maestro, and Tom Casale. Before we get into the games and looking forward to the Sweet 16, Tom, I want to bounce something off you because there's just a lot of transfer portal and coaching news, and it all started with Ben McCollum now leaving Drake for Iowa. Your reaction to that, does it feel like a good fit? What do you think of that news?
It does feel like a good fit. Listen, Iowa's had success in recent years, but they play fast, and I always thought it's hard for Iowa to recruit the kind of athletes consistently to play that style where it'll be successful in the NCAA tournament. Now they're going to play a slower pace. I think it's easier for them to recruit the kind of players they'll need for McCollum's style of play. And listen, whenever we think of Iowa sports, we think of Iowa football scoring 11 points a game, right? Now we got Iowa basketball playing slow, scoring 56 points a game. Now it all comes together for the Hawkeyes program. I think this is a great hire, and I like the system he's bringing to Iowa.
All right, Larry Hartstein, your reaction to Ben McCollum joining Iowa.
It sounds like Tom likes the hire. I absolutely love the hire, guys. I mean, he grew up in Iowa City. He's a Hawkeyes fan, and he doesn't always like to play as slow as he played with Drake. I mean, if you look at his teams at Northwest Missouri State, he likes to be more of a medium pace guy, and he's already got his star, Bennett Sturts, to follow him to Iowa, assuming he doesn't get drafted in a high position. And he's also going to get some of those Iowa kids to stay. I mean, they're going to get more NIL money. This is a guy that won 82% of his games, and he's already done something that Fran McCaffrey never did in 15 years, and that is beat a big-time power conference school in the NCAA tournament. Fran McCaffrey was only 4-7 in the tournament, and he never beat a school as a big-time school like Missouri. So I just think this is a home run hire all the way around.
All right, Mike McClure, you're joining the fray. Are we 3 for 3 on an excellent hire with Ben McCollum going to Iowa?
I'm right there with the guys here. I think this is an excellent hire. I do think that we'll see the pace of play change for Iowa for sure. And when I look at this, I want to echo what Larry said, basically. I think that they're going to get quality players here. It's going to be a lot easier for Ben McCollum to get people to come into the University of Iowa than it was in his other stops. So I think this is a great spot for them. I think they're going to be competitive really from day one. I expect them to be a team that's knocking on the door of the NCAA tournament. I really think this is an excellent move.
All right, well, let's get back to the NCAA tournament. Larry, I'm going to start with you. We have a lot to set up for the Sweet 16, and eventually we're going to get into our best bets for the Sweet 16. But I got to ask you, because I think there are so many compelling matchups for the Sweet 16. What's your favorite one, or I guess the one you're looking forward to the most?
I think it's got to be Kentucky and Tennessee meeting for the third time, and Tennessee expected to move on despite losing both games outright as favorites. Laid 10.5 at home, laid 3.5 on the road. They lose both. Now they're laying 4.5. And is Kentucky going to keep shooting 50% from deep, which is what they did in each of those games? I think a big storyline is Tennessee they fell in love with the three-pointer in that game at home. They shot 45 threes, which is not characteristic and not what they should be doing at all. But I think there's a lot of pressure on Rick Barnes in this matchup. I think Kentucky is a pretty live dog.
All right, Mike McClure, most interesting game for the Sweet 16.
All of them, but really Texas Tech
Yes.
and Arkansas here. I think this game is fascinating because I think both of these teams have a wide range of outcomes. And you look at Arkansas as a 10 seed, the way they're playing right now and down the stretch here, that they're playing more like a 4 seed or a 5 seed than a 10 seed. So that number 10 next to their name is a little deceiving here. When you get this deep in March, I really care about having at least one excellent guard on the floor. That's what they have with John L. Davis, who was coming over from FAU, has the deep tournament experience throughout his entire playing career. But when I look here, what I like about him is he can hit that three. He's an excellent rebounding guard, and he's shown a lot of maturity staying out of foul trouble in these games that he would have previously been in earlier in his career. So just having that coaching experience with Coach Cal, having that guard play, I think that this game is interesting because I think Arkansas is misseeded as a 10 seed.
Yeah, it appears so. Tom Casale, when I think of interesting games, a lot of times I think of firepower. And when you look at Alabama and you look at BYU and you look at the total, this one is going to be an exciting back and forth.
Yeah, listen, everyone knows what kind of basketball I like. I like fast, fast, fast. And we got the matchup here with BYU and Alabama. They're going to run up and down the court. I always think, to me, Alabama is always the most, when you take betting out of it, the most fascinating team in college basketball just to watch, because you know what they're bringing every game. They're trying to shoot with 10 seconds into the clock. They're going to let teams shoot 5 seconds into the clock. So their games are exciting to watch. And BYU is a tough matchup. Listen, this team's scoring 80 points against pretty much everybody not named Houston recently. So, I think this is going to be an exciting game. I'm not going to bet it. I'm going to sit back and watch it as a fan. But if you like high-scoring, fast-paced basketball, this is going to be the matchup for you.
Well, Tom, I'm going to bet it because I already put it out there on SportsLine. I got BYU plus 5.5. We'll see. I've been riding the BYU train. I can't jump off now. Let's talk about the top seeds. We've got the 4 number 1 seeds in there still, obviously. It's been a pretty chalky tournament so far. Tom, I'm going to start with you. When we look at the teams playing those number 1 seeds, we're talking Michigan, Maryland, Purdue, and Arizona. Any of those teams you like, or I guess the team you like the most to upset a 1 seed?
Yeah, I do think all the 1 seeds will get by. I think the one in most danger could be Auburn. I'll be honest, I love Texas A&M against Michigan. I loved them. I thought it was a great matchup. I thought they were going to beat them. And I'm really impressed that Michigan, what they did in the second half of that game, because it wasn't a great matchup on paper. And the thing that really impressed me is they won the rebounding battle against Texas A&M, which I didn't see coming at all. So sometimes when a team gets by that close first game, they get that second game going, they're playing well, they got the size to throw at Broome. It's going to be an interesting matchup. So if I had to pick one seed to go down, I still think Auburn is the most vulnerable out of all of them.
Mike McClure?
I think it's Houston. I like Purdue. I think that this Purdue team is one, again, that they had a lot of variance throughout the season. We know what their potential is, but they've got some experience on the floor, whether it's with the coaching staff or the players on the floor themselves. But we have to talk about the home court advantage that they're likely to see here. They get this game in Indianapolis as a night game, allowing fans time to funnel in and time to get there. It is a very, very good draw for them. The knock that I have on Houston is their style of play. And it's a great style of play for a lot of the season. But when you get here, you're in for a rock fight. You're in for a lower scoring game. And they're not a great free throw shooting team. That's going to allow a team like Purdue to hang around. I think we're talking about a 1 to 2 possession game in the final 2 minutes here. And I think that Purdue, with that home court advantage, can pull it off.
And Larry, you agree. You think Purdue might be able to pull this off as well?
Yeah, a lot of pressure on Kelvin Sampson because this is the round that he has been eliminated in the last 2 years when he was also a number 1 seed. And you have the home court advantage. You have the best point guard in the country. And Houston is an unbelievable shooting team from beyond the arc. But now we're in a big stadium. Will those shots go down? And like Mike, I think it's going to be tight late. And maybe that home crowd carries Purdue to the finish line.
All right, we asked this very question on the YouTube SportsLine community page. So if you want to get in on that, weigh in on an upset. Speaking of upsets, I do think we have to talk about John Calipari. We started with Ben McCollum. We should probably touch on Richard Pitino joining the Big East with his dad as well. But let's stick with John Calipari because I don't know, Tom, if you think his legacy has been cemented already. It was certainly a nice win last week. Does he have anything to prove against Texas Tech?
Oh, I don't think so. I made a comment earlier in the year that he wasn't coaching very well, and I stand. It's not that John Calipari isn't a good coach. We know that he's a good coach, but I thought when he came to Arkansas, he still had too much Kentucky in him. You don't have 5 of the top 10, high school recruits, and he had to change the way that he coached, and he did that. Credit to him. Listen. The team wasn't playing well. It wasn't a cohesive unit early in the year, but he figured it out down the stretch. And I think Mike said something important. This is it's not a 10 seed. If you're looking at their metrics, don't bother. This isn't the same team we saw 2 months ago, so their metrics are skewed. This is a very dangerous team in the tournament right now.
Yeah, fair enough. Larry Hartstein, anything to prove for John Calipari?
I don't think so. They were 1-6 when they went to Rupp Arena, and that game, that 10-point win, kind of turned around their whole season. And like Tom said, it's not really an underdog or a double-digit seed. Reportedly, they have the highest payroll player salaries in the SEC. So, yes, I don't think he's got anything to prove, but he does have the talent to go further in this tournament.
Mike, anything to add here?
No, nothing really to add. There's nothing to prove here. He had the good fortune, and if we're talking legacy, right? What did he get the opportunity to do? Take out Bill Self, Rick Pitino, and he's labeled as a double-digit seed, the underdog in the tournament. It's all upside here for John Calipari.
Oh, what a perfect setup if you're going to get those W's. Absolutely love it. Speaking of W's, if you three don't mind sticking around, we got to get to our favorite Sweet 16 bets, and that's exactly what we're going to do on the other side of the break. A lot of compelling games, a lot of very interesting games, but a lot of covering of spreads we want to do here at the early edge. All our favorite sides, all our favorite plays, all our favorite totals. It's coming up next right here on the early edge. We're back on the early edge, and we continue with the Sweet 16 theme with Larry Hartstein, Tom Casale, and Mike McClure. Let's get into some best bets. And before we get into our favorite sides and our favorite totals, I do love when we have consensus, gentlemen. And we do have consensus when it comes to the following question. Which number one seed do you think, or you have the most faith in covering the spread? And Larry, I'm going to let you start here because all three of you agree. We got Florida laying, 6.5 points, depending on where you look, against Maryland, who barely escaped New Mexico. Larry, you like Florida here?
Yeah, the market jumped on them too, pushing this up from 4.5. And Maryland basically wants to play the same style as Florida, but they only have 5 guys who can do it. They only got 2 points from their bench in that escape in the last round. I just think Florida, they go 9 deep. They're starting 5 matches up pretty well with Maryland. And I think at some point, even though you have the long timeouts and even though people talk about how the benches don't matter, I think this is a game where it will matter because of the pace that the game is played at. Florida escaped. They knocked off the defending champs. That's not easy to do. And now I think we're finally going to see their A game in this round.
Yeah, Mike, it's interesting because we think of Maryland escaping New Mexico, but it's very true that Florida escaped UConn. So it sounds to me, though, like you agree with Larry. You're laying what is now kind of a big number, 6.5.
Yeah, it's kind of a big number. Certainly liked it more at 4.5 or 5.5, but I ultimately think that Florida is definitely the better team here. When you talk about the depth, I think that has to be the story. When we get to this point in the season, I like to look at a lot of the metrics and see where the computers might be overrating certain teams. And where I think they're overrating Maryland is the same metric that Tom and I've talked about many times. It's the defensive free throw rate. If you look at what Maryland did this season, they played so well without fouling. However, this matchup against Florida, with the pace of play that we're going to see and the lack of depth, I'm not so sure that they're going to be so elite in terms of keeping Florida off the free throw line. And I think that is personally going to be the difference. I also think it's why some of the computers are overrating Maryland in this matchup. So I would lay the points here with the Florida Gators.
Tom, foul trouble could be a huge issue for a team that's not very deep in Maryland. And I got to say, this is music to the ears of so many who picked Florida to win it all, or at least go very far. Tom, anything to add? You like Florida as well?
Yeah, I gave out Florida 5.5 when it came out. I couldn't get the 4.5. It didn't last very long. But I agree with what Larry and Mike said. Listen, I thought Florida was a little tight against UConn. Playing the 2-time defending champions, you saw their perimeter shots were short and they couldn't make free throws. That's always a sign to me that a team's a little tight. Then what did UConn do? Slow it down, back cuts. You saw Florida defenders looking around. They were confused. They got behind. Now that they got past that game, I think they take a breath, and these guys are right. Maryland's going to play their style. They played fast with Alabama and beat them the last 3 times. So if you're going to play fast with Florida, good luck. And I agree 100% with Mike. Florida's coming downhill in this game. And I think this is where the depth for Maryland, the lack of it, comes into play. I think they get into some foul trouble. Look for Florida to pull away here in the second half and cover the 6.5 points.
All right, I want to now talk to our favorite Sweet 16 upset, and that's going to transition to our favorite sides and totals. And spoiler alert, Mike, your answer here is the same because you like, as a favorite upset, Arkansas.
I do like Arkansas here. I think that they're not properly rated, right? I think it's extremely difficult to go rate them. We talk about this a little bit in every sport. You see it down the stretch in college football some too. If you look at the full body of work, I think the spread is correct. If you look at what you've seen over the last 30 calendar days from Arkansas, and more specifically the last 15, if you're willing to buy into that, I think that this game should be a lot closer to one possession. You've got obviously a legendary coach in John Calipari, but I like the guard play on the side of Arkansas. I really like John L. Davis in this particular tournament. The question is going to be, can the bigs for Arkansas stay out of foul trouble? I don't think that they necessarily can for all of the game, but I do think that John Calipari has enough experience managing situations like that they'll be able to weather those little 2 to 3 minute storms and keep this game a one possession game. So I love Arkansas here with the points.
Tom, I'm changing my mind. I think that might be the most compelling game. They're all so interesting. Larry, including yours, Kentucky, Tennessee. We're talking about Tennessee laying 4.5 points. You like the dog in this one?
Yeah, they've already beaten them twice, and the thing that jumps out to me is the better defensive team since the start of February has been Kentucky, not Tennessee. Since Kentucky gave up 98 to Ole Miss, they have totally changed things up defensively, led by Lamont Butler. We saw it against Illinois. We saw the steals. We saw the way they turn those into points, and I just think it's another situation for Rick Barnes where there's going to be a lot of pressure on them. Kentucky as the dog. Kentucky has the length to shoot over them. I think Kentucky can get it done. They're the number 10 defensive team in the country since the start of February.
Wow, that's a pretty compelling stat. Tom, you agree on the Arkansas take from Mike McClure?
Yeah, listen, we were all on shows last week, and we were warning everybody who picked St. John's to go to the Final Four. The Johnnies had one of the toughest second-round matchups in recent history. They were going to play Kansas or Arkansas, right? And those were two of the top 15 teams to begin the season. And I think that's what we're saying here is this Arkansas is closer to the Arkansas we thought we were going to see, not the team that we saw. And I would argue this. If you took away just seedings and everything and you said, give me the team that's played the best in this tournament, I might have to say Arkansas. I thought Kansas played really well and Arkansas beat them. St. John's kept coming at them, kept coming on runs. Arkansas said nope and kept pulling away. I think they've played excellent in this tournament. So 5.5 is too much for me.
All right, let's everybody get out your BetMGM app, and because we got to get to our favorite sides and our favorite totals. Larry, I'm going to start with you. Your favorite side for Sweet 16?
It's going to be the Michigan Wolverines getting 8.5 and in some cases 9.5 against Auburn. And Auburn just hasn't looked as dominant down the stretch. And they had 5 straight games where they didn't cover. They managed to cover against Creighton very late. But the way Michigan can defend them, they can put one of their bigs on Broome. They don't have to double down and leave the shooters open. So that's going to be a big factor. They're so well coached. You saw they were down double digits against Texas A&M, and they come storming back, getting great play in the backcourt now, not just the two bigs. So I don't expect them to win the game, but even if they're down 14-15, they can come back and cover this spread.
And Tom, we talked about this on the front end of the segment, but you like Florida laying the points as your favorite side.
Yeah, listen, sometimes I like to bet favorites in the Sweet 16 typically anyway. We shouldn't have a problem this year. It feels like favorites are hitting at a 98% clip. But, I just think the cream rises to the top. And sometimes the value is with the favorite. Like Alabama laying 5.5 to St. Mary's was comical. So, sometimes that's where the value is. And I think right now the value is with Florida. I kind of think they win rather easily here.
Yeah, get in the SportsLine Discord, by the way, because Tom is always in there breaking down college basketball, and he has that flavor you hear here on the show. You hear it or see it on the SportsLine Discord as well. Mike, we're going back to Arkansas. We're taking a dog here, plus 5.5.
Yeah, I'm going to take the points here. See, I'm, when I simulate the game, I got the number at 3.5, and you could talk me into having it closer to 2.5. Frankly, I think that Arkansas is just, as we've talked about throughout this segment, they're not properly rated. I am more willing to buy into the recent result on a team like that when you've got a legendary coach, you've got that kind of payroll on the roster, you've got the talent. It's never been a question of the talent. It's just getting it to all work together. So when you see signs of life in those kind of situations, I'm far more likely to buy into that than some underdog story making a Cinderella run, right? And that's not what this is by any stretch of the imagination. I think they match up pretty well in this game against Texas Tech, who I do think is a good team. It's just should not be flirting with 2 full possessions at 5.5 here. Give me the points with Arkansas.
All right, we go from underdog to unders. Let's rapid fire this. This is how I know this show is sharp, because I want to go to favorite totals, and the three of you all have unders. Larry, rapid fire, what's your play here?
Yeah, Michigan State, Ole Miss, and Tom Izzo turns most games at this time of year into a grinder. They have the number 1 3-point shooting defense in the country, so Ole Miss is not going to shoot 50%, which is what they've done from beyond the arc, and Ole Miss has a top 20 defense as well, so let's go under.
Tom Casale, what's your under?
I went Arizona team total under 72.5. Duke does not give up easy baskets. They don't foul. They don't turn the ball over. They don't give up points in transition. They make you grind and play a half-court game. I don't think that's Arizona's strength. Give me the under 72.5.
Mike McClure, round us out with the third under.
BYU team total under 85.5. This is not a personal attack on UCA. This is just a big number. A lot of things still have to go right. I know that they will run with Bama for a lot of the game. I don't think that's the recipe to trying to beat Alabama, is to outrun them here. There are so many scenarios where BYU scores 85 points, wins the game outright, or covers the spread, or doesn't cover the spread. Just a big number. Pay to find out here, under 85.5.
Mike, I do really appreciate you caring about my feelings here. So no offense taken. Let's go BYU, but let's stay under that team total. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you thought we were just going to be talking March Madness, I don't know if you heard, but we've got opening day coming up. So we're going to say bye to Larry. We're going to say bye to Tom Casale. Coming up next, we've got AMags. We've got Mike McClure, and we've got opening day. We've got futures, opening day bets. It's all coming up right here on the Early Edge. We are back on the Early Edge, and I got to tell you, I am so excited about opening day. We'll get back to March Madness later on in the show, but we got Angelo Maglioka, a.k.a. AMags. We got Mike McClure, and tomorrow, gentlemen, we've got opening day. We got some futures to talk about, some opening day bets to talk about, and AMags, I'm going to start with you. I kind of want to set the table here. What kind of season do you think we're in store for? Are we going to see a lot of home runs? Is it going to be that kind of season? Pitchers dominating, maybe injuries taking center stage, whatever the case may be, the Dodgers. What kind of season should we be looking forward to?
Well, it's already been a little bit different, right, Sia, with the opening and the Japan series. And of course, we did have a little bit of that last year, but that was fun to kind of get our feet wet. And now as you turn to the rest of the season here, the rest of these teams, you've got the A's playing in Sacramento, right? That's a minor league ballpark. You've also got the Rays playing in a minor league ballpark. So there's some implications there if they were to, the A's, I know maybe a little bit more far-fetched, but if either one were to make the postseason, that would definitely be a little bit of a different feel. And then as well, the O's, the Orioles, moving their fence in almost 20 feet in some spots. They would have had 30 more home runs hit to left field last year if that fence was where it is now. So that could certainly be an implication.
That is very interesting. Mike, any thematic stuff standing out to you?
Not a lot. I think overall, as a complete picture, it's probably going to play very similar to what we saw last season. I do like to point out, like AMags here, talking about the O's in that AL East. I think that can have some impact there just because you've got the Rays and the O's with different changing situations. But overall, I expect it to be really, really pretty similar. I'm expecting basically, per team runs per game, 4.2, 4.3. I think that's likely where it's going to be, which is basically where it has been. A little bit the last few years overall. So I don't see major trends one way or the other.
All right, before we get into specific futures, let's talk about a team, Mike McClure, that might surprise, maybe made some improvements that might not be on everybody's radar. How about a surprise team for 2025?
It's hard to call the Texas Rangers a surprise. It's certainly the household brand, the name. I just think that they bounce back in a big, big way here. And what I'm saying here is I don't necessarily think that they're just challenging for a playoff spot. I think that they should be considered a favorite in the American League. I think that they have a massive edge when it comes to a pitching staff if they are healthy. I think that lineup, again, you look at a guy like Corey Seager, I think he's in for a huge bounce back year. I think that lineup's going to be healthy, and I really like what they've got in that division itself. So for me, it's the Rangers, but wanting to emphasize that we're not talking about just having a winning record and making the playoffs. I think they're a legit threat to go win the AL.
Yeah, we've done a couple of shows, Mike, and AMags as well, obviously on the SportsLine YouTube channel. It's in people's podcast feed, Apple, Spotify, what have you. You guys completely sold me on these Rangers bets, including winning the division. We'll get to all of that later. But, AMags, I'm sitting here in D.C. right now. Talk to me about the Nationals, because I can promise you they're not on a lot of people's radars.
The Nationals are definitely not on the radars. And as you said, the plus 850 or so to get to the playoffs, like I'm not fully there with this team, but I do think this team can really outperform what they did last year, right around that 70 win mark. We've already bet them over 70 and a half wins for this season. They've got guys like CJ Abrams, James Wood, who I really think are going to continue to take steps forward, Luis Garcia as well. But the pitching too, it's addition by subtraction here a little bit. You get rid of Patrick Corbin and the over 5, near 6 ERA. You get some of these younger guys, Mackenzie Gore, you're finally giving him the reins a little bit. You also actually bring back Trevor Williams and a veteran presence there in that starting rotation. Finnegan in the bullpen also brought back as the closer. So I do think there's some nice pieces here. They've improved that lineup a ton. I could see them getting actually close to 80 wins, if not a little bit more, above 500.
All right. So we're not running down the plus 850 and definitely auto betting it, but it's certainly a team that can make improvements. Now, if you win your division, now you're going to make the playoffs, right? Let's talk about another future. Mike, I'm going to start with you. A team that's plus 300 or greater to win their division.
Let's go back to the Kansas City Royals, Sia. I think this AL Central is just flat out wide open. And you're talking about a team in the Kansas City Royals at plus 310 with the favorite to win the AL MVP award, Bobby Witt. He has surpassed Aaron Judge in betting markets to win the American League MVP. I just think this roster is one that you also, let's talk about a Cy Young candidate in Cole Reagans, the starting pitcher, workhorse. I think he gets 200 innings this season. And then the rest of the division, you got the White Sox in there. But I think the other teams in the division have kind of all bunched together here, which means Cleveland's taken a step backwards, in my opinion. I thought this number should have been 210, not 310. I like this spot a lot for the Kansas City Royals.
Mike, I'm sold on that one as well. AMags, interesting one here, because we brought up, in terms of ballpark dimensions, we brought up the Rays, we brought up the Orioles. A lot of people like to talk about the Yankees in the AL East. They're having some issues with injuries. Nobody's really talking about a plus 300 Boston Red Sox team.
Yeah, the Red Sox here, and I kind of just snuck them in at the over plus 300, right? Because that was the criteria. But look, I think the number should really be much closer to where the Orioles are for this team. So look, the Red Sox, they've brought in some extra pitching. Garrett Crochet, we will see him on opening day. That is an awesome, awesome addition. I like what they've done with the lineup as well. They've started to hit over the last couple of games here in the spring. So at plus 300, the number's too good to not at least have something on a couple of major books at that number, but also I believe it's on DraftKings. You can actually get to finish in first or second place still at plus money for the Red Sox.
I think the AL East, there's so many compelling divisions. The AL East is just so compelling. Kind of agree with you on the Red Sox. I do think the Orioles are going to be good, and obviously the Yankees going to be pretty formidable. Speaking of formidable, the Dodgers are plus 240 to win the World Series. I got to be honest, guys. I find the Dodgers super annoying because they're just spending money willy-nilly. It's just no salary cap, just deferring payment, like all of these things. I feel like a lot of people have that sentiment where they're just kind of like rooting against the Dodgers. And when you look at the board, you got the Dodgers at plus 240, and then the next two teams down are the Braves and Yankees at plus 900 to win it all. That is a huge gap. I got to ask you just right off the bat, we're going to actually get to your World Series winners and your setup there, but is this just an auto play on the Dodgers to win it all? AMags, I'm going to start with you.
definitely not an auto play on the Dodgers to win it all. We did mention this on one of our preview shows that over the really long sample size of the entire season, it's going to be very tough to take this Dodgers team out. So I think the open and shut cases that they will win that division, I actually took some at minus 400 on them to win the division, but I still think that that's too light. Long sample size, they definitely get there for the division. But, when you get into those 5-7 game series, man, anything can happen. We saw a scrappy D-backs team go to the World Series a couple years ago. I think that something very similar could happen, and the Dodgers could easily be knocked off for the full thing.
That's maybe a preview to our next question. But before we get there, Mike McClure, is this team a shoe-in to win it all or no?
I wouldn't call it a shoe-in to win it all. Are they extremely likely to get there? Yes. I think that they're the best team by really a wide margin on paper. And I think, like AMags said, the path to them just simply winning the division, being in the playoffs, having a good seeding situation, that is extremely likely to happen. But you still have to go win that individual series or two. And that's where I think the variance can really catch up to them. And when you factor in the price point at plus 240, not something I would be anxious to go bet right now, because we don't know on injury situations, right? This is a situation where I personally would just wait and bet them to win each series and continue to roll over that wager. You're likely to hit plus 400, plus 500, depending on the matchups that they run into.
All right. So Dodgers at plus 240. Don't bet that right now. We'll see what happens in the playoffs. That's what I took away from that. And if you want more picks from these guys, and we're about to get to opening day picks, by the way, go to SportsLine. Go to sportsline.com/join. If you're not already a member, and if you type in the promo code winners, you get 60% off our annual plan. Again, at sportsline.com/join. Type in the promo code winners to get 60% off the annual plan. You'll get picks from all our experts and up-to-date model projections for all the games happening that night. That includes futures, DFS plays, you name it. Sportsline has got it. And coming up next on the Early Edge, we're sticking with MLB, and we're going to opening day, and we're getting into our favorite bets for opening day tomorrow. It's with AMags, it's with Mike McClure, and it's with all of you right after the break. We're back on the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas, and I am joined again by Mike McClure and AMags. Gentlemen, it's here. Opening day is here. Well, almost. We have so many games tomorrow. A lot of them start in the afternoon, the 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock time range, and then we get into some just a few night games. But let's just get it started. Favorite bet for opening day? Let's start with maybe a money line bet. Mike McClure, go.
How about the Texas Rangers here on the money line home opener? Just a lot of great energy around this team, and I really thought that they should have been a little closer to 52%. I think you should be paying basically minus 110 instead of the even money price point here. I love the fact that they're at home. I love Eovaldi on the bump to start. I just think this is a team that is a little bit underrated, and I think the market will frankly adjust quickly over the first month of the season, but I expect them to be one of the best teams in Major League Baseball right away.
Yeah, I'm going to look at that one too, Mike. Maybe one of my patented first 5 plays. It's funny, AMags, one of the AL East games that teams we didn't talk about, I mean, it's literally the only one we didn't talk about throughout the show, is the Toronto Blue Jays. That's where you're headed for your money line bet.
Yeah, I am seeing, and it's funny you mentioned that we didn't talk about him at all, but this team, even if I don't think the long-term outlook is great for them, getting him at plus money here on the money line. Look, Jose Barrios against Zach Eflin. If you remember last year, Eflin actually pitched the opener for the Rays against this team. He went 5 innings, only gave up 1 run, and then got absolutely torched in the 6th inning for 6 total earned runs in that game. This lineup, I do think, breaks through against Eflin here. And again, I mentioned Barrios. Look, the guy's been pretty good at home, but also a bit earlier in the season, too. He kind of finds his groove. So I have no problem riding them at a plus money here. You're also missing Henderson and Santander from that lineup. That O's lineup looks a little bit depleted, so I will definitely take the Jays at plus money.
All right, let's hit up some hitting props and pitching props. AMags, I'm going to stick with you here. Your favorite hitting prop for opening day?
Yeah, it's real fun that we get to say this guy's name again, finally. Mike Trout I'm going over 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs. And it's more about the White Sox pitching and Sean Burke and their plethora of over-the-hill relievers. That bullpen, every guy is like at least 30 years old. And I really don't trust Sean Burke, this guy that had an over 4 ERA in AAA last year, to come up and to pitch further into this game than he has in the spring. He hasn't even completed 4 innings. So you're going to put a pretty good amount of tax on the bullpen there and those relievers. And as I mentioned, besides Mike Clevenger, I really don't think anyone has any potential there. It's the White Sox. You kind of go there to hopefully revitalize your career, I guess. But I just simply think that Mike Trout will be better than everyone else on the field. And at this price for 1.5, a guy on the away team towards the top of the lineup, he hit a home run in his final game there this spring as well. I definitely like Trout, at least in the early going while he's healthy.
Yeah, I mean, we go from one superstar, I love Mike Trout, to another in Juan Soto, Mike McClure.
Yeah, same market. It's 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs, minus 105, the price point on Juan Soto. Look, near the top of the order. Road team, guaranteed 9th inning team at bat, debut for the new team. We know that he loves the spotlight, loves picking on a team like the Houston Astros as well. But for me, this prop was made for a guy like Juan Soto. When you're talking about the hits, runs, and RBIs, the runs part of it really benefits a guy like Juan Soto, who is just a wizard at getting on base. He is so good at drawing walks. I think that he's going to be in position to grab a run just simply because he's on base. And then at that point, you're just essentially looking for a hit of any kind. I love this prop for Juan Soto.
All right, let's move to pitching props. AMags, I start with you. Sell us on sale.
Chris Sale over 5.5 at plus odds on the strikeouts. You're really not going to see this all that much this season, but it's about the workload. We don't exactly know what we're going to get from him, but I'm pretty encouraged. Last couple of starts here in the spring, 9 strikeouts, 5 strikeouts. He has gotten towards that 70 or even over 80 pitch mark. I do think in this one, against San Diego, it's not the best of matchups for him. But again, we're at 5.5 for plus money. We're not paying juice. We need a 6 strikeout. I think at worst, we can get 75 or so out of him in terms of pitches. And, if we can even get 4 innings, that 6 strikeout could easily come for us. And it could be the bottom of that Padres lineup that actually helps us out. So I'll take plus money on Chris Sale all day. But be careful betting pitchers early in the season, especially opening day. But their first or second start, it's tough, man.
All right, fair enough. Good advice there. Mike, I know the Cole Reagans props have not fully posted yet, but you're keeping an eye on when that market posts for Cole Reagans.
Yeah, Cole Reagans, I want to go over on his outs recorded prop. I just think he's going to have the ability to pitch deep into games here. I know it is a spot where you typically want to be careful on opening day, but to me, he's clearly the workhorse in Kansas City. I think that when you look at this matchup here, a team that really doesn't strike out a ton will try to put the baseball in play. That actually helps keeping that pitch count down for a guy like Reagans. I think he's going to go 6 full. And that market will definitely be available on game day. I'm going to go over outs recorded for Cole Reagans.
Opening day is tomorrow. You're going to see a lot of Mike McClure. You're going to see a lot of AMags for a very long time. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining the show with your picks. Of course, more picks from these two on SportsLine. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you we weren't done with March Madness. We're joined by Mackenzie Brooks next. How about how the model feels about each one of these Sweet 16 games? Final scores, predictions from Mackenzie Brooks coming up next on The Early Edge. We're back on The Early Edge, and I am joined by Mackenzie Brooks. And Mackenzie, if you're on here right now, it's got to be because we got to talk Sweet 16. So we got a fun thing I want you to do kind of later on in terms of maybe a rapid fire through each of these Sweet 16 games. But I do want to start with something maybe a little bit more important. There's still some value potentially in betting outrights. And some of that value is a result of how the SportsLine model assesses where some of these teams are specifically in their efficiency ranking. So can you just talk to me about that and maybe some teams that fit that model that are likely to win it all?
Yeah, so this is a trend, it doesn't honestly even come from the SportsLine model, but just a trend we've seen in the past 25 years. 24 of the 25 last champions have been top 21 in offensive efficiency in KenPom, top 31 in defensive efficiency in KenPom headed into the tournament. We started with 8 teams that fit this mold on Selection Sunday, and now we're kind of whittled down to around 5. You have all those 1 seeds obviously fitting it, and you have Tennessee there as well. Now, what's funny is there's actually more like 7 teams that fit this specific mold, including Alabama and Arizona. But with Arizona, this is a West Coast team hasn't won since 97. So in my head, I kind of want to dink them out of there. Now, what's funny about Houston specifically, while they do fit that KenPom mold there, what they don't fit is that since 2004, every single champion was ranked in week 6 of the AP poll. Houston was not ranked in week 6 of the AP poll. Now, am I saying that's all, makes sense and correlation and causation and all those things? But I will say 2004, that's a pretty long time we've seen consistency. So something about that week 6, very interesting. So to me, Duke, Auburn, Florida, Tennessee fits it. They're barely fitting it. Their defense is really around that hook of that top 31 right now. But definitely interesting stuff to see the trends and see who it wilts down.
For those of you on the West Coast that take umbrage with Mackenzie manually taking out Arizona, I'm sure we can put her email up. You can send the hate email that way. Mackenzie, I do want to do something fun, and I obviously agree with how you whittled that down, but we've got these Sweet 16 games to go. And I looked at your notes during the break, and you've got like all kinds of things going on in terms of how you and the SportsLine model are assessing each of these games. My understanding is that you've got final score predictions for each of these games. And I think people are kind of interested in that. Do you mind just rattling through all 8 games? Just give it all to us.
We have the full bracket filled out right now and all the notes here. So allow me to unlock the SportsLine model vault for you. Let's start with Duke, Arizona. Okay, I'm starting at the top of the bracket here. Projected score, Duke 81, Arizona 72. Okay, this is one of the relative smackdowns of the 1 seeds in the Sweet 16 that we're going to see. First of all, Duke's got 2 guys are just hot from deep, which we love to see. We give them the plus 5% 2-point edge. Again, just objectively better in every statistical category, which we'll see as a theme for Duke in general. Then we go to BYU, Alabama. We have this as a close game. BYU 83, Alabama 84. If BYU can get hot from deep, that is what we need to see from them. However, Bama's 3-point defense has been objectively better than it was last year. If BYU can shoot like 35% from 3, that's the key number, the threshold to me, for them to potentially take this game. I think this could be one of the upsets. We move down. Houston 76, Purdue 68. Again, this is just a bad draw for Purdue. Purdue hasn't really played anyone yet. Respectfully, High Point and McNeese, I think this might be a wake-up call for them when they see Houston. They can have a very, very vulnerable 2-point defense. We saw in a stretch of February, they were allowing like 91%, 69%, 70%. Bad news there. This could be a scary, vulnerable spot for them. Kentucky, Tennessee. Kentucky 74, Tennessee 78. Really hard to beat the same team 3 times if you're Kentucky, right? Tennessee, they had some injuries as well here. And when Kentucky won those games, they were shooting over 50% from 3. I find it very hard to believe you can pull that off again. So we're going with Tennessee here. Give them the 60% chance. We move on to the other side of the bracket. Auburn, Michigan. Auburn 81, Michigan 71. We make it a 10-point game. Here's the problem with Michigan. The turnovers. Their centers, their bigs, awesome guys. However, they love to turn the ball over on top of that. And Auburn finally has the size to actually compete with this Michigan size that we're seeing. We move. Ole Miss, Michigan State. Michigan State 76, Ole Miss 71. Ole Miss, very similar vibes to Purdue, okay? What they're doing, it feels like we got to see a regression. They're shooting lights out. They also got a UNC team that's not really physical. They got an Iowa State team with some injuries on it, so I feel like Michigan State will be a decent wake-up call for them. Also, Tom Izzo, 9-0 against SEC teams in the NCAA tournament. We move. Florida, 77, Maryland, 74. The Crab 5, the Terps. Like BYU, Alabama, this might be one of the upsets, okay? I know it's the depth. The depth is the problem 100% for this team, but if they stay out of foul trouble and they can limit the turnovers, that is where Maryland could potentially win this game. Obviously, Florida objectively better in every other way. Finally, Texas Tech, Arkansas. Texas Tech 80, Arkansas 71. St. John's beat St. John's, okay? I don't know how much of that had to do with Arkansas. Texas Tech, such a clean basketball team. They are statistically better in just about every single category. And I think Texas Tech could go pretty far.
Mackenzie, that was unbelievable. That's the best segment I've ever done, and I did nothing. That was so good. Thank you very much. I do a lot on the early edge, though. I'll tell you what, 10 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday on the SportsLine YouTube channel. That's where you can find me, and that's sometimes where you can find Mackenzie Brooks. Make sure you're clocked in right there on the SportsLine YouTube channel. We'll see you next time, folks. What a great show. Have a great opening day. We'll see you tomorrow, too, on the early edge.